College admission officers. What is the worst reason you rejected a student? Just graduated college last summer. Worked in the undergraduate admissions office for 4 years as a student ambassador, tour guide, shadow host, etc., and as an admissions counselor's assistant. Worst case I've seen is a kid openly admit in his application essay that he was a habitual cheater throughout high school, but it taught him how to become resourceful and think outside the box. I've never seen an application get denied faster.
That's a pretty wild experience. Can't believe someone would put that in their essay. I guess he thought being honest would work in his favor. But yeah, that kind of thing definitely doesn't fly with admissions. They're looking for character, not excuses. It's a good reminder for anyone applying. Just keeps it real and straightforward.
My mother does this. At her college, they get so many applicants every year that it basically comes down to really simple things when rejecting potential students. When you've got thousands of people vying for a limited number of places, eventually you've whittled down the list to a bunch of equals, and you're still left with too many. At that point, it's basically up to the seemingly inconsequential and random choices of your admissions officer.
That's an interesting take on college admissions. It highlights how competitive it really is. In the end, it can feel pretty random for those who put in so much effort. My friend faced something similar when applying for his program. He was really proud of his application, but it just came down to luck. Makes you wonder how much of life is about being in the right place at the right time.
Super late to the party, but my mom is an admissions counselor. I know I'm sorry I'm not one. But the worst story I've heard from here goes like this. The student was outstanding, top GPA, test scores, good essay, but my mom had never heard of the school. So she does some searching and can't find anything on the school. Odd. So she types in the address on Google Maps. What she finds is an abandoned school, which turns out no one has attended for years. Kid forged the entire application. I thought it was impressive, but she did not. Instant Denis.
That's a wild story. I mean, trying to get in with a forged application takes some guts. The kid had good grades and everything, but the moment they found out the school was abandoned, it was over. It's kind of sad, though. You have to wonder what drove them to do that in the first place. Guess some people just really want to make it, no matter the cost.
Watching medical school applicants come through my school has been very interesting. I'm not on the admissions team, but have been a student interviewer. It's really interesting to see what people will do, even at that high level. Seeing someone fall asleep during a presentation on the curriculum. Seeing someone get up during a 15-minute talk by the dean of the school and go to get things out of their bag. Hearing someone ask if they have to attend the whole interview day. You would think you wouldn't see these rookie errors at such a high level.
It's surprising to see how people handle pressure in that setting. I remember sitting in on interviews, and some candidates just seemed oblivious. One guy was munching on snacks, completely missing the point. Another just stared blankly at the dean, like he was in a different world. It's wild to think these folks are aiming for medical school, but some actions just don't reflect that seriousness. Makes you wonder about their priorities.
At one admissions presentation I went to for a good school, the admissions officer told us that one student applied to their school with over 100 letters of recommendation. He didn't have good grades, but hoped he could get in if he got everyone he knew to write him a letter of recommendation. He was turned down.
It's kind of wild how some people think that just numbers or quantity will do the trick. I remember a friend who tried to impress a job with tons of references. They had good intentions, but the quality mattered more. In the end, being genuine and showing real skills beat out the sheer volume. Shows that effort and substance are key, not just a bunch of names.
Once, one of those college speakers at my high school told us this story when explaining letters of rec to us. One teacher wrote a letter for an extremely good student. She was kind, hardworking, got good grades, A&S, she also babysat for the teacher, so obviously this teacher had no shortage of good things to say about this student. However, later on, after the letter of rec had been sent in, the college got a call from the teacher, who took back everything she said in the letter and told them to not consider the student. Why? Because she caught the student stealing from her house.
That's wild. It's interesting how someone's character can change so quickly in someone's eyes. The teacher really thought she knew the student well, but that moment must have shattered that trust. Makes you think about how important integrity is and how even one mistake can affect future opportunities. It's a reminder to always be mindful of our actions, even if we think they won't have serious consequences.
I once went and visited a college that my brother was interested in. All of the potential students and parents sat down in an auditorium. The admission officer must have been having an awful day because he proceeded to go on a full-blown / rant. He said, if any of you write a college essay about a tragic event in your life, it has to be tragic. An essay about how you moved in your sophomore year of high school to another state and no longer had friends with you, that is not tragic. If it is supposed to be a tragedy or huge overcoming, then it must be a tearjerker. Every time I see an essay about overcoming a lame obstacle, it instantly hits the bin. Needless to say, my brother did not attend. Edit. Apparently a grammar mistake is the end of the world.
That college visit sounds rough. The admission officer really put everyone on blast. It's wild how some people think they can dictate what counts as a real struggle. I mean, everyone has their own story, right? My brother probably dodged a bullet not going there. If they judge essays like that, who knows what else would be a problem? It's like they don't even remember what it's like to be a teenager.
I don't know if this counts, but as a summer job one year I worked as an admissions advisor for one of those online universities. Literally everyone got in, but we could still reject individuals if they didn't meet certain criteria: minimum GPA, recommendation letter, etc. Every morning we would get a list of leads to call. This was basically comprised of individuals who clicked the university's banner on a website and entered their phone number. So I get a lead for this fellow, who's 85 and wants to complete his MBA. He turns out to be the meanest person I've ever talked to. Starts yelling at me from the get-go. Didn't want to hear anything about the requirements. He just wanted to know about the student loan process. I ask him for a ballpark of his GPA, and he goes off on a tangent about how that's none of my business. Clearly trying to scam the system. Needless to say, I rejected him, and it felt good.
Sounds like an interesting summer job. That guy must have been tough to deal with. It's funny how some people think they can just bypass the rules. At least you stood your ground and rejected him. Must have been a relief to handle that situation. It's wild how someone so much older can act like that. Kind of shows that age doesn't always mean maturity.
I'm an admissions officer now, and the worst one I have seen was a beautiful essay ending in "that's why I want to attend," not the university I work for. Like, really, dude? Off topic, but I just recently read an essay that made me cry due to everything the poor student had gone through in life. I felt like an asshole for complaining I had brought pretzels instead of chips for lunch that day.
That's a wild situation. The contrast between that carelessness and the heart-wrenching story is pretty noticeable. It shows how some people just don't get the process. Meanwhile, that other essay really gives you perspective. It's easy to get caught up in small annoyances until you hear someone's real struggles. Makes you rethink your own problems for sure.
I'm not a college admissions officer, but there is a scholarship in my area provided by a business. It's an amazing opportunity, and I never thought I would get it. Well, lo and behold, I get it. The organization has a representative at my school, so I asked her why I got picked. She asked me what I wrote my essay about, and I told her. I was at camp one year, and I helped a girl with some serious problems. She then told me that both scholarship people in colleges have gotten to the point that they will turn you down if you write about how the mission trip you went on changed your life. They're sick of it. Freaking everyone goes on a mission trip, sees starving children, and suddenly their life is changed. She says that they totally support missions and the things they do, but she also said if you write about the mission trip you went on, you may go to heaven, but you won't go to Harvard.
That's a pretty interesting take on essays. It's true, everyone seems to write about mission trips. I remember my friend had a similar experience applying for a scholarship. He wrote about a community project instead. It was genuine, and he got recognized for it. Just goes to show that authenticity matters more than just following trends. Sometimes standing out is about sharing a different kind of story.
Not an admissions officer, but this happened to a kid in my school when I was younger. 7 kids applied to Harvard, and all were qualified. A rep came into town to interview them all at once. One kid gets a question. If you were stuck on a desert island and all you had was a power outlet, a TV/VCR, I'm old, and 7 videotapes, which do you ask for? The kid replies, truthfully like an idiot, 7 pornos. He was the only one that didn't get in.
That's an interesting story. Sounds like the kid wasn't really thinking about the interview. It's surprising how one offhand comment can change everything. I guess it shows that some things don't translate well in formal settings. It's a bit harsh he didn't get in just for being honest, but I suppose they were looking for a specific type of answer. Life's about the choices we make, I guess.
My girlfriend works in admissions for a community college. She runs the committee review for the convicted felons that apply. They do generally accept felons that have done their time and are trying to make their lives better. However, if they worry about the safety of the student or follow students, they will deny their acceptance. Sex offenders, murders, or people that have committed violent crimes are usually denied.
It's interesting how community colleges aim to help individuals rebuild their lives. Your girlfriend's job seems important, balancing safety and second chances. It's good to know that they're open to giving people a shot, as long as they don't pose a risk. It must be tough to decide sometimes, figuring out who deserves that opportunity for change while protecting others. It reflects a lot about the values of redemption and community support.
The worst reason is definitely applying on time. In many cases, including a school I worked at, waiting until spring or even summer benefited the applicant, as the school was desperate to hit enrollment numbers and lowered standards significantly, e.g. a 3.0/1000 wouldn't get in January, but would receive a $20,000 scholarship in May. I wish I knew that when I was 18.
That's an interesting take. I remember when I applied to colleges, I was all about getting everything done early. Looking back, it might have been smarter to wait and see how things played out. Some of my friends got great deals by applying last minute. It's funny how timing can really change the outcome. If only someone had told me that back then. Would have saved me some stress.
Not a conscious decision, but it mattered. I worked in student recruitment for a university. The student recruitment software did not handle non-standard names or non-US addresses well. I had to run a bunch of SQL queries I had cooked up that caught all the out-of-format applicants, then try to rewrite their data so it wouldn't get thrown out. If I didn't essentially hand-comb the database for these applicants, usually with non-Anglo names, they would not get university communications.
It's interesting how small things can have a big impact. Working with diverse names in student recruitment meant that a lot of individuals were unintentionally left out due to software limitations. Spending extra time on SQL queries to fix that data sounds tedious but crucial. It's a reminder that behind every name there's a real person, and sometimes it takes a bit of extra effort to make sure everyone gets a fair chance.
I don't have a rejection, but an acceptance story. I applied to the 3rd best fashion design school in the US and spent weeks working on my portfolio. I was accepted and later got to see some of the admissions portfolios for other students. Some were essentially stick figures. I guess they accept everyone because it's crazy expensive and they just want your money. This is the same school that accepted Amanda Bynes while she was going through her breakdown, so yeah. It was a tough program though. I guess they accept everyone and start weeding them out in year 2. From my original class, there were only 6 of us that made it to graduation. I did learn my lesson though, art schools will take anyone.
That's an interesting take on the whole admissions process. It seems like some schools really just want to fill seats and get that tuition money. It's tough to hear that some people might get in with minimal effort. But it sounds like the program was serious enough to push you and your classmates hard. Only 6 making it through says a lot about the challenges. Guess it's not just about getting in, it's about sticking it out.
The whole process of college admissions in the US is quite interesting. In Australia, we don't have to write essays or know anything about the university you are attending. In your final year of high school, you list your top 5 preferred degree from your preferred university. Then everyone is ranked at the end of the year according to tests and assignments done over the past 12 months of study. They apply some weighting to account for poverty index based on your area, etc., and out comes a number that ranks you according to everyone in your state. It's all very efficient and impersonal.
It's wild how different the college admissions process can be in different countries. I have a friend from Australia who was totally baffled by the US system. Writing essays and trying to convey who you are seems pretty personal. Meanwhile, she just had to focus on her grades for a rank. Makes you think about how systems shape our experiences. Efficient, but maybe a bit too detached, right?
Copy/pasted from an email I received from a prospective student. Nothing was altered here except for his name being redacted. Edit, and school and star basketball player. I think you were at my school, and you were from school name. I have some questions first. I took the ACT and got a 17, but a 23 in math. What scholarships does that get me? Do you have classes with star b-ball player? He's so dope. I want to study biochemistry and cure cancer. I really want to go to UR school, but I'm going to go on my own terms. Redacted. Needless to say, even at a state school with a near 90% acceptance rate, he was rejected when his application came around.
It's pretty interesting to see someone so eager about their goals. Reaching out like that shows determination, especially wanting to study something as impactful as biochemistry. But it's a reality check when you think about how competitive things can be, even in state schools. Sometimes, passion doesn't match up with what the institutions are looking for. It's a tough world out there.
Worked in a graduate admissions office in college. We once turned away a woman who would call the office every day to ask us questions about the program that we were not able to disclose. Average GPA/GMAT of class accepted so far. Job placement rate. This was a brand new program. The first class hadn't even graduated yet. For this year, etc. Eventually, we rejected her because her resume wasn't as built out as some of our other applicants. I guess this is different for grad school, though we did look at her application with a slight bias. She flipped a switch and actually came into our office to scream at us.
Sounds like that was a pretty intense situation. It's wild how some people can react when they really want something and feel rejected. I can imagine the tension in the office during that encounter. Sometimes you just have to stick to your decisions, even if it leads to confrontations like that. It's part of working in admissions, I guess. People are passionate about their futures.
I was in grad school, and grad students have a huge say in who get admitted into this particular program. We have the prospective students stay with current grad students so we can do some social things and feel out how they are as a person. I got this kid from a top-flight university. On paper, this kid was a stellar candidate, but he was such a pretentious asshole and a straight-up loser nerd that is saying a lot, this being grad school admissions. After he left, I sent an email to the head of the admissions saying so in ever so slightly nicer words. Got an email back that said, "Yeah, that guy seemed like a dick. We didn't accept 2 people that year. That guy was one of them, for being a loser. In grad school."
Sounds like you had to deal with some serious egos back in grad school. It's wild how admissions can come down to personal interactions. That kid may have had the grades, but his attitude clearly didn't fit in. It's a reminder that being a good fit isn't just about qualifications. Pretty interesting to see how one bad vibe can affect someone's future like that. Sometimes, it's all about the people you meet.
Pretty sure the only reason I got into my choice of school was my academic rank and Texas automatic acceptance stuff. Seriously, my application was horribly boring and uneventful in content. If I hadn't graduated top of my class, I'd probably never have been accepted to a university straight out of high school. Kind of dumb for everyone else while being nice for me. It's frightening to think of my chances had I not automatically qualified. I feel really bad for the people who work their asses off only to get rejected for pettier reasons. Worst thing about it all? I withdrew and flunked out of electrical engineering at the end of my sophomore year due to negligence and lack of responsibility, and am now finishing course at my local community college. I was not ready for uni life at all after breezing through high school without ever cracking a book. There are kids far more deserving than I am, and it frightens me that such simple things are preventing them from attending their dream schools.
It's interesting how luck plays a role in education. I had a friend who worked really hard for years, but their application got overlooked. Meanwhile, I sort of coasted through high school and got in based on grades alone. I ended up struggling in college and couldn't handle it, while others who truly deserved it faced rejection. It's a weird system that doesn't always reward effort, and it makes you think about fairness.
I work at a college doing admissions, advising, scheduling, all bits of it. It never ceases to amaze me when students tell me that other colleges they have attended don't matter, or they don't want those credits anyway. Well, actually yes, they do matter. Those old classes can end your time at the college. Why lie? I am there to help you. Oh well, that national database will tell us everything.
It's interesting how some students think their past classes don't matter. I've seen it too. My friend once dropped a bunch of credits thinking he could start fresh. It ended up costing him more time and money. Some lessons stick with you, I guess. When you're in it, it feels like a waste, but it can catch up with you later. In the end, it's always best to be upfront about it.
This year I was really prepared and was going to submit it on the 1st, and for some reason I forgot it's based off last year's taxes, and I don't have my tax return yet. I was so disappointed. I feel like every day that my boss takes to get our tax returns to us, I'm missing out on possible financial aid.
I can relate. Last year, I had everything set for my taxes, but I realized I was missing a few forms at the last minute. It felt pointless to be on top of things when I couldn't complete it. Then, waiting for my tax return felt like it dragged on forever. Just hanging in limbo, knowing I could be using that money. It's frustrating when you're ready, but everything's out of your control.
Weird, I was told a story by one of my teachers back in the day of a boy this happened to. How long ago was this? My school was quite good, and they used to allow students to stay in classrooms sometimes to do their own experiments. In the chemistry department, they used to have pet fishes as little mascots. Nothing untoward, just kept them there as pets. One day, this boy was left alone in the room for a bit to do some personal work, as he was considered a solid student, a solid candidate, and just a general all-round excellent worker. The next day, all the fish were dead. The school didn't mention it or do anything about it. They just cleared out the fish, made it policy to never to get any mascots again, and then sabotaged his university application when they called up for a supporting statement. I believe this all happened shortly after shipment, too, so the school was especially paranoid.
That's a pretty rough story. It's weird how things can change so quickly. One mistake from a solid student leading to such a drastic consequence. The school's reaction seems extreme, especially since they didn't even address it openly. It's kind of sad how paranoia can end up ruining opportunities for someone who was otherwise doing well. Makes you think about how small actions can have big impacts on a person's future.
While it's fun to theorize he is evil, I half suspect the real reason he had to forge his supporting statement could just be some dispute with the school's financial office regarding the payment of his last student activity fee or an on-campus parking ticket. At my school, that office was seen pretty vindictive like that, coupled with horrible accounting practices that made lots of errors.
It's interesting how some things can spiral out of control. It's probably just paperwork messing with him. Schools often have these weird rules, and it's easy to get caught up in disputes over things like parking tickets. It's frustrating, but it happens. I guess it shows how much can ride on things that seem small at first.
I agree. People complain about how the hiring process is unfair and too picky, but when you have 200 applications for one spot and 50 applicants are perfect for it on paper, you have to narrow it down somehow. That means discounting perfectly capable people because of slight grammar mistakes, CV layout, and other things that really shouldn't matter at all. It's unfair, but it has to be done somehow.
I get what you mean. It's rough out there for job seekers. Sometimes, it feels like a game of chance rather than ability. I remember a friend of mine who had a great portfolio but kept getting rejected for minor issues on his resume. It's frustrating because it overlooks real talent. But with so many people applying, I can see why they have to find a way to filter through the noise.
At that point, it's basically up to the seemingly inconsequential and random choices of your admissions officer. I have a friend who got rejected from a university because she had done an English Lit, a level and English Language A level, in addition to sociology and history. Got 3A and an A, which is phenomenally good, like walking to Oxford good, and was rejected because they said 2 English A levels was basically cheating. Understandably, this caused confusion when applying for a degree in English.
That's an odd reason for rejection. It's tough when hard work isn't recognized. My friend put in all that effort, and to hear that 2 English A levels are seen as unfair feels strange. It's like they didn't even look at the overall picture of her qualifications. It can be really frustrating when something out of your control affects your future. Sometimes it seems arbitrary, but that's the system for you.
I'm at a school in the UK, which sends a lot of students to Oxbridge. It's clear how arbitrary the admissions process can be, because some incredibly talented people were rejected while relatively worse people were accepted, although they were still wicked smart. Everyone applying to these units with a serious hope of getting and has a 95% average grade, and some people were rejected with 99%. Some people think it's quotas of some sort, others that too many people missed their offers last year.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I've seen similar situations with friends applying to top schools. It's kind of wild how the admissions process works. You can have stellar grades and still not get in. It often feels random, and people make all sorts of theories about it. It's tough to see talented folks get overlooked while others make it in, even if they seem less qualified. Just goes to show that it's not all about grades.
I went to Accepted Students Weekend at an excellent university, top 20. It was during April in a location further south than my home, so the trees were blooming there already when they were not in my hometown. I have severe pollen allergies, and I wasn't prepared for this, so I took a Benadryl and ended up falling asleep in a presentation by a top researcher in my chosen field. I felt awful, sad face. Good thing this was already after I had gotten in.
That's rough. Allergies can hit hard, especially in a new place. Falling asleep during a big presentation must have felt pretty bad, but at least you were already accepted. Can't imagine how uncomfortable that was, but it's nice you still got to check out the school. At least you have a story to tell about it.
This is the worst. Many students have tragic events in their life that would completely change admissions views about them, but a good chunk of these stories are much too personal and intimate. Admissions doesn't need to know about how awful your hell is if it's something you can't even tell your best friend.
I get that. There's a balance between sharing enough to connect and overloading with personal stuff. Sometimes it's tough to figure out how much to reveal. It can feel like you're exposing a part of yourself that's better kept private. Maybe it's about finding the right words that show resilience without diving too deep. Keeping it simple might be the best way to go.
When I applied for uni, I actually had 2 essays ready, one about some BS moment that I overdramatized because I have an incredibly boring life, and the other was an essay I was kind of proud of where I refuted the assumption Fat Candy won event deaded me. It was probably also shit, but I wonder if I might have had better luck applying to the US if I had used my second essay. I basically did really well in applications where I didn't use that essay. But my university counselor told me to submit the first one because the second one was good, but diverged from the prompt too much. I'm under no illusions that my second essay would have been that good, but I still wonder if I may have been luckier if I submitted that instead. Sorry for the irrelevant tangent. Your post just reminded me, and I wanted to talk about it.
It's interesting how those application choices can stick with you. I think we've all got that moment where we second-guess our decisions. I had a buddy who freaked out over his college essay too. He wrote something serious but ended up submitting a joke piece instead. Took a gamble and it worked out for him, but I get that feeling of wondering about the road not taken. Just part of the process, I guess.
I don't see this as a bad reason for rejecting the applicant. In your defense, he was rejected on account of his behavior. I'm sure you and your boss/higher positions at your job wouldn't have liked for unnecessary rudeness to be there. This also partially reasons with being able to reject anyone altogether.
It's pretty straightforward. Sometimes, it's just about how someone behaves. If you're running a team, you want to keep the vibe positive. A rude person can throw everything off. At the end of the day, it's better to have a harmonious workplace than to deal with unnecessary drama from a single individual. You want everyone to work well together, and that includes being respectful.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of college advisors say that the service trip is overdone as an essay topic. Every overprivileged kid writes about them, and they don't actually help those villages anyway. I've seen a handful of good ones, those students aware of the perils of it, or writing about how they didn't realize until they got there that they were involved in a poverty tourism feel-good-about-myself venture, and hadn't been helping, and how they were now determined to approach international aid with more humility by doing what the individual people and villages needed, and not what seemed like a good idea from the comfort of their own homes. That was a pretty good one.
Yeah, I get that. A lot of people jump on the service trip bandwagon without really thinking about the impact. I've seen some get it right though. They go in with good intentions but realize it's not about them feeling good. It's about understanding the real needs of the community. That shift in perspective can really change how they approach things in the future. It's all about humility and listening.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.